So why do you think I should work for the National Security Agency?
Well, you'd be working on the cutting edge. You'd be exposed to the kind of technology that you wouldn't see anywhere else because we've classified it. Superstring theory, chaos math, advanced algorithms.
Code breaking.
Well, that's one aspect of what we do.
Oh, come on. I mean, that...
Yes. Hello. I'm your host V. And you are currently watching the 5th of November movie series. And this is the second one to follow Know Your Enemy. This one is Know Your Enemy's Tools. And I want to say the first documentary was just a warm-up because we're going to get right to the nitty-gritty. And I'm also going to state that, all this information is factual. Get it from factual sources and factual just evidence altogether. Science is there. As much as I like hearing different stories from people, as much as I like covering different social, political issues and psychological war, I really like talking about science. So this is really a targeted individual documentary, and one that's actually going to do a lot better than Vice documentaries. I know Vice made a documentary for targeted individuals that just didn't cut the mustard. It doesn't have if there's any real effort put into that documentary. Well, I could say that because, I am a TI myself. I'm a targeted individual. And there are many targeted individuals who felt slighted, felt robbed by Vice documentary take on the situation. And I tend to agree with them because not only did they interview targeted individuals who were not very knowledgeable, not researched at all about what's going on with them, but they interviewed target individuals that were not known to anybody. I mean, they didn't interview Karen Stewart, NSA whistleblower. They didn't interview Mitch Mathis. They didn't interview Todd Giffen. They didn't interview anyone that was known. They didn't even interview me. So that basically tells you that the narrative was controlled to not reveal any truths about targeted individuals. I'm here to show Vice News and Vice documentaries how to make a factual and real journalistic production. So, I digress. So we are going to go into the enemy's tools, the enemy's weapons.
Hi, Lieutenant General Bob Elder, U.S. Air Force retired, and I'm here to talk to you today about 21st century electronic warfare, and actually really a call to action for all members of the old crows to advance electronic warfare for the 21st century. Here's what I'd like to talk about today. My purpose is to examine the role of electronic warfare in the 21st century military operations, and really just to highlight quickly some of the relationships with other modern warfighting capabilities. First thing I want to talk about briefly is this concept of an electronic warfare operational domain. Now we know that electronic warfare is conducted in every warfighting domain, but in fact, electronic warfare itself is conducted in a global domain of electronic systems that operate in an electromagnetic environment. That is, those electronic systems control the environment to create, control, exchange, and employ electromagnetic energy across the frequency spectrum, or as we typically refer to it, the EMS, but we do this to achieve physical, informational, and cognitive effects. So we have an operational domain, and that point, the key point, is that this domain consists of the electronics and the electromagnetic spectrum. When we look at electronic warfare, we have a long-standing definition that has been used in the U.S. Joint Pub that says that it's any action involving the use of electromagnetic or directed energy to control the electromagnetic spectrum or attack the enemy. I think it's important to recognize control has always been part of the definition, and this notion of using it to attack the enemy has always been part of the definition.
Well, so that's a mouthful already. So the definition, controlling the EMF spectrum through electronics and other means, and control. I'm glad he said that. It's all about control. And I'm going to show you the significance of what he's saying a little bit later in this film. Let's first go through the electronic aspect of this.
Do you like your privacy? Probably. Well, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but privacy doesn't exist. Well, at least not anymore. And it's unlikely to ever return. Why? Because everything you do is trackable. Of course, the National Security Agency, or NSA, takes most of the heat for spying and invasion of privacy, but there are thousands of government and non-government groups in the world doing the same thing. I'm Mike with List 25, and today we're going to learn a little bit about 25 creepy ways the NSA spies on you, and maybe understand more of the pros and cons. #25. The PRISM program requires internet services like Facebook and Google to pass information on to the NSA. And yes, this includes emails. If you've ever heard the name Edward Snowden and wondered why he's such a big deal, he was the guy who leaked detailed and classified information on this program, among others on this list. #24. According to the Patriot Act, the US government is allowed to obtain business records that they deem relevant to terrorist investigations. 23. The government is allowed to gather information on every call made in the US, including the number dialed and even how long the call was. 22. Think hacking computer systems is only a civilian operation? Okay, well, most of you probably know better. Tailored Access Operations, or TAO, is the NSA's hacking unit. It has developed numerous ways to break into various devices. 21. TAO consists of over 1,000 military and civilian computer hackers, as well as intelligence analysts, targeting specialists, computer and software designers, and engineers. 20. The unit prefers to tap into networks rather than isolated computers because there are usually numerous devices on a single network. 19. The stated objective of TAO is to identify, monitor, infiltrate, and gather intelligence on computer networks used by entities outside the US. 18. The TAO's motto is allegedly, "Your data is our data. Your equipment is our equipment. Anytime, any place, by any legal means." 17. The NSA has coerced numerous manufacturers into intentionally building vulnerabilities into their products. 16. The NSA is known to intercept shipments of various computer products and build backdoors into them. 15. Various governments use submarines to attach snooping bugs to the massive underwater cables that carry internet data from continent to continent. 14. Deals with various financial institutions allow the NSA and government agencies to track your purchases. 13. It's possible to triangulate your position by using cell phone towers, even if you aren't making any phone calls. 12. Even if you try to mask your internet use via something like Tor, you won't escape government surveillance. The NSA has ways to track you, even on the deep web. 11. Unlike the DIA or the CIA, the NSA focuses on gathering SIGINT, or signals intelligence, rather than gathering information from human sources. 10. The NSA stores and analyzes the data of over 1 billion people around the world. 9. It's possible to track you by using the metadata from your cell phone. 8. Even the pictures you post online have information attached that allows you to be tracked. 7. Five Eyes is an agreement between the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand to share intelligence data. 6. The NSA, along with its Five Eyes allies, aren't the only ones spying, though. While they receive most of the attention, there are dozens of other countries around the world employing similar means. 5. Russia, China, and even North Korea all have very advanced intelligence agencies with the ability to track and monitor people around the world. 4. Although there are numerous lawsuits against the NSA and other allied signals intelligence agencies, there are numerous agencies that operate in the dark, especially in countries where human rights are lacking. 3. Unfortunately, there's no way to completely prevent yourself from being tracked. In fact, as the world becomes more connected, it only becomes easier to track people. 2. Even if the NSA were shut down and the US government stopped all tracking, there are numerous other actors that would fill the gap. 1. Cyber warfare and signals intelligence are the future of warfare and spying. Unfortunately, there's no way to stop this, as more and more of our lives are connected to the internet.
Now, as awful as that is, with these, I hate calling people, again, they're psychopathic fleshbots, people without conscience. Usually people who are so paranoid. And yeah, it's their job to be paranoid. It's their job to think up all the other things that could happen in the world, but they're not into defense. This is all about control. And usually when it comes to control, you've got to be hands-on. You've got to attack. Now, as far as our privacy is concerned, yeah, it does not exist. I will get further into that because it's not just computers, but I do suggest that everyone have devices that are offline. I'm not telling you to get off the internet, but have your online devices, have your offline devices. I would tell you, I would not have a TV show. I would not have had a radio show. I would not have had a lot of media capabilities had I not had one or two devices that were for offline work only. I suggest keeping all your sensitive data out of clouds, off of online devices. Have your online devices as mediums. Use your USB memory cards, your SD cards, your micro SD cards. Keep all the information that you find to be important on storage devices that are not connected to any computer. This keeps data out of the hands of the government. It keeps the editing aspect or deleting aspect. I mean, I don't know how many people have talked to me and said, you know, I was working on this or I was working on that. Had whistleblower information here, whistleblower information there. And now it's deleted off my computer, or, oh, my entire operating system was corrupted. And this is the kind of thing, you know, national security is all about, is to protect them from us. It's not about protecting us. There's no us together as far as they're concerned. It's them and us. And they continue to victimize people with this technology. So let's keep going with this.
The second point, which also comes out of U.S. joint doctrine, says that EW activities have been developed over time to exploit the opportunities and vulnerabilities that are inherent in the physics of electromagnetic energy. So as practitioners of electronic warfare, we are actually, or we should be, experts in the physics of electromagnetic energy and how to apply that to achieve effects. What types of effects are we talking about? Well, electronic warfare activities are inherently physical. And so we have electronic attack that operates against the electronics. That's why it's called electronic warfare. More recently, we've had this capability with electronic attack to actually have directed energy, which is actually taking the electromagnetic energy and applying it against an object that may not be another form of electronics to create an effect.
Now, what kind of effects are we talking about here? Yes, they're hacking, they're disrupting, that sort of thing, but to have effect on the physical world means something, and on devices that, you know, offline, and then on objects that are not computer devices. They're not electronics. Now, this is going to set the tone for the entire rest of the film. How this electronic spectrum doesn't only affect electrical devices. So let's see what these other effects are.
Well, we turn now to other FBI news. The agency acknowledged the use of drones to carry out surveillance within the United States. On Wednesday, under questioning by Republican Senator Chuck Grassley during the hearing of the Senate Judiciary Committee, FBI Director Robert Mueller confirmed the domestic use of drones. He also said the Bureau is still drafting regulations to address privacy concerns.
We are in the initial stages of doing that, and I will tell you that our footprint is very small. We have very few and have limited use, and we're exploring not only the use but also the necessary guidelines for that use.
Does the FBI use drones for surveillance on U.S. soil?
Yes.
I'm concerned the FBI is deploying drone technology while only being in the initial stages of developing guidelines to protect Americans' privacy rights, Udall said. Meanwhile, in the latest leak of classified NSA material, The Guardian reported Thursday the NSA can keep copies of intercepted communications from or about U.S. citizens. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISA court, signed off on rules that appear to grant wide latitude to the NSA in making use of data rather than minimizing its usage.
Both Both, I believe, conservative and liberals have been claiming for years that drone use in the United States is rife for abuse. The reason is they can be made in any size. Researchers at Johns Hopkins are looking into how butterflies move so that they could craft drones the size of mosquitoes or birds. They have the ability to have infrared cameras on them, heat sensors, and also the ability to stay airborne. They call it loitering for long periods of time. Contractors such as Raytheon and Boeing are working into ways to keep them airborne even longer. The danger, of course, being that with small drones, they can pass in dense urban areas such as New York City, into an apartment building, stay there, conduct surveillance. Even now, drones have the capacity through heat sensors to determine, I think through a 1-foot concrete wall, if people are moving around inside. Drones do not require a space from which to depart the way manned vehicles do. So they can be deployed virtually in any area. Furthermore, technology has not kept abreast with developments in the law. And as was cited earlier, the regulations are really lagging behind. Safeguards about how they can be used need to be developed. There's a rush right now by military contractors and law enforcement agencies around the country to tell the FAA how they can integrate drones into domestic airspace in the next 2 years. And billions of dollars have been given to contractors for that purpose.
It's just we're going into a different world, uncharted, and like it or not, what people can do or governments can do is different, and you can to some extent control, but you can't keep the tides from coming in. We're going to have more visibility and less privacy. I don't see how you stop that. And it's not a question of whether I think it's good or bad. I just don't see how you could stop that.
Heidi Bogosian.
It benefits large corporations who have a very snug relationship with government intelligence agencies to develop drones and to deploy them wide scale over United States airs. Privacy protections, we have a reasonable expectation of privacy in our homes. If small aircraft are flying around and able to monitor us over long periods of time, track us, track our associations, that presents a huge problem. Fusion centers were created around 2003 to 2007 as a way to better coordinate intelligence across the country. The problem is they partner with the private sector, the business industry, so they share intelligence with one another. It's obviously to businesses' best interest to increase the amount of data that they get because they're also improving analytics for the government to avail themselves of in order to make sense of the vast amounts of data that's being collected. So technology is being developed that the government relies on. Big money is pouring into corporations, and in exchange, private sector is giving that information to the government.
We may come to a point where defense is more actively and aggressively defined even for the private sector, and what is permitted there is something we would never let the private sector do in physical space. I mean, you look well, I mean, let me really throw out a bumper sticker for you here. How about a digital Blackwater? Okay? I mean, we have privatized certain defense activities, even in physical space. And now you've got a new domain in which we don't have any past trampled down in the forest in terms of what it is we expect the government or will allow the government to do. And in the past, in our history, when that has happened, private sector expands to fill the empty space.
It was called the HP scandal. In fact, Hewlett-Packard hired a private contractor, I believe there were 2 of them, to do what's called pretexting, which is now illegal in many areas. Basically, they pretended they were someone else, called up, records keeping places to find out information about the people who had leaked criticism of HP. We see a lot of that. Private security.
Linked to journalists.
Linked to journalists, exactly. And we see under the Obama administration an increasingly secret classifying of more information, declassifying fewer documents and cracking down on journalists, which of course goes to the heart of our democracy. Without the free exchange of information, we become a very repressive state.
We earlier reported today that Max Kelly, the former chief security officer for Facebook, went on to work for, well, since 2010, he's been working for the NSA.
But it's a close partnership. There's no two ways about it. And going back to drones, the drone industry lobbied very hard and expended, billions of dollars to push to get drones in the sky very quickly.
Found it pretty intrusive and kind of creepy.
High-flying drama in Sacramento's Land Park neighborhood tonight as residents are furious over a flying object. The mysterious drone has been spotted during late-night hours looking down on their homes. Good evening, I'm Tony Lopez.
And I'm Christina Janes. Only on CBS 13 we're getting answers on what government agency is flying the aircraft and why.
The drone would fly over here.
John Maddox first spotted the mysterious drone about a month ago.
Come home from work, it would be operating, go to bed, it was still operating, and this would repeat day after day.
His neighbors in Sacramento's Upper Land Park neighborhood wondered what it was doing.
It just doesn't feel good. It kind of hovers around. You don't know what they're looking at.
It flew over our house until 3 o'clock in the morning, like 2 or 3 nights in a row.
You're just walking at night or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, and it like hovers.
The housing authority says the program is legal, but some neighbors have doubts.
We feel our privacy is being invaded.
And opponents say this type of surveillance technology doesn't belong in a residential setting.
This is not an appropriate way to police the community.
Now, the drone is part of a 90-day pilot project which costs about $20,000, and opponents are asking the city council to intervene and cancel the program.
I know, as sickening as everything you just heard, it seems to be overwhelming. I know, as sickening as it is. I want to go into the examples. I mean, we just heard word of mouth. Let's see it in action.
It's no secret that DJI has led the consumer drone revolution. And if you've seen any kind of thermal imaging, chances are it was shot with a FLIR camera. Now we are proud to announce a new collaboration with FLIR, one that will transform aerial imaging for the industry. He combines DJI's expertise in camera stabilization, advanced flying platforms, and long-range video transmission with FLIR's state-of-the-art thermal camera technology, a first for the industry.
The XT provides users with superior thermal imagery and sensitivity to better than 1/10 of a degree. By integrating the XT with DJI's Inspire and Matrice airframes, we are giving people incredible precision and empowering them to put it into the sky almost instantly.
Researchers at the University of California, Santa Barbara have developed a system that allows a pair of drones working together to see through walls. The technique, which uses nothing but standard Wi-Fi signals and off-the-shelf components, was invented by researchers working in the lab of Yasemin Mostofi, a professor of electrical and computer engineering. Mostofi said, "Our proposed approach is enabled unmanned aerial vehicles to image details through walls in 3D with only Wi-Fi signals."
These days, the idea of unmanned vehicles, such as copters, becoming part of our society is not too futuristic. Wi-Fi signals are also everywhere, and the received signal strength of a wireless transmission can be easily measured in any Wi-Fi equipped device. In this paper, we're interested in the possibilities created at this intersection of robotics and communications. More specifically, we show the first demonstration of 3D high-resolution true-wall imaging of completely unknown areas with only Wi-Fi signals, which is enabled by using unmanned aerial vehicles. Let's first see some experimental results. Consider this 3D area. These two copters are equipped with Wi-Fi transceivers and are interested in imaging this area through walls with only Wi-Fi RSSI measurements. They fly outside of the area of interest, while one of them transmits a Wi-Fi signal and the other one measures the corresponding received power. No prior measurements have been made in this area, and so the area is completely unknown to the robots. Here's the top view of the unknown area of interest. And here is a 3D binary ground truth image of it. The right figure then shows how our two copters image the area with only Wi-Fi. As can be seen, the copters have successfully imaged this area in 3D. We can see that the empty and occupied spaces are imaged well. Let's now see how we have enabled this. There are 4 key parts to our proposed methodology. First, consider path planning of the robots. Using unmanned vehicles allows us to have several autonomous transmit-receive antenna positions, which is key to solving this challenging problem with only Wi-Fi RSSI. But what path should the robots take? We have proposed robot routes that can capture the spatial variations as much as possible while maintaining the efficiency of the operation. More specifically, our proposed routes are a combination of sloped routes to capture the variations in the z direction, as well as horizontal routes to capture the changes in the xy plane. Next, we model the 3D space of interest as a Markov random field to capture the spatial dependencies. Then by using the Hammersley-Clifford theorem, we can write the conditional probability of x given y as follows. Finding a solution that maximizes this probability is an NP-hard problem, however. We then use loopy belief propagation to efficiently find an approximated solution. For the modeling of the interaction of the transmitted wave with the area of interest, we use an approximated wave model that results in a linear expression. We finally take advantage of the fact that while we're dealing with an extremely large number of unknowns, the signal of interest is compressible in its information content. Overall, our proposed approach has enabled the first demonstration of high-resolution 3D true-wall imaging of completely unknown spaces with only Wi-Fi RSSI measurements. See the paper for more details and results.
We're bombarded by these radio waves. So can we use them to say something about the environment, about the objects? Because these signals interact with their objects. So then we have this very natural questions. How much can they tell us about the environment? We basically wanted to see X-ray vision with Wi-Fi. So imagine there's an area, there are walls, and behind those walls there's an object. Let's say 2 robots move outside of the area. One is transmitting a signal with a Wi-Fi card and the other one is receiving. And that transmission, it goes through the object. In a sense, we can say they leave a signature on the signal. And that signature is what we're trying to use, and from that reception, figure out something about the object. And the more measurements they can collect, they can do that imaging better. That means being able to tell you the location of the objects, their geometry and shape. We've shown that you can actually do this. But we actually could do a little bit more, because what we extract also tells us something about the material property. And so what we hope is that in the future, we should be able to say something more about what kind of object is there.
Okay, so they can see through the walls. And we've been talking about this for quite some time. I know I've been talking about this for quite some time. Okay, these people can see through your walls. And it's really pervasive. It's really disgusting. I currently, right now, have a drone that floats directly above my home every night without fail. Since I've lived in Poland, actually. There's one right here above the studio. Right now, as we speak. I wish there's a way I could show you, but I mean, here in Poland, it's ridiculous. I know I haven't been in the U.S. for over 2 years now. Even when I lived in the U.S., anywhere I lived, directly above my head has been these drones. Anywhere I lived, when I lived in California, actually, one night I I opened up my window and I flipped off the drone. You want to know what happened after that? 2 minutes later, 2 K9 unit police vehicles were spotlighting my home. Spotlighting. And I really, it wasn't just an issue of me being angry that this drone was floating above my then apartment, California. I wanted to actually test to see if it was in fact looking at me, or if it was surveillancing the entire city. Oh, because, that's the excuse these days. We're surveillancing the entire city for crime, the entire, watching traffic, helping with responders, da-da-da-da-da. In the town I lived in, granted a small town of maybe 18,000 people, that's still a lot of people to have to look at. With one drone, and it actually picked up the fact that I gave it the bird. I lived in California for quite some time and actually ended up moving to the foothills. I had a trek, a 2-3 mile trek from the radio station to my new residence up in the mountains. The drone followed me from radio station to my home. It's really sick. And so I'll make it back to what I was saying about here in Poland. This is really getting bad. I live here in Wrocław, and the second largest city in Poland, a very large city. Now, there is a drone in the sky where I live, not just above me, but every quarter mile. If I wanted to walk down to the store, I would pass by 3 drones in the sky that hover in the same spot every night. I'm quite disgusted knowing the capabilities of these things. So, Let's move on, shall we?
But a concept that we tend to have ignored is this concept of electromagnetic spectrum control. It's become increasingly important, particularly for those who operate where you have radio-controlled IEDs, those types of things. We recognize it's that much more important. And this electronic support, or electronic warfare support, that allows us to do our electronic attack, do our electronic protection, and control the spectrum has become more important. So these are kind of the elements of those physical activities that constitute electronic warfare. So obviously we have physical effects that you see listed here that can go against the electronics, go against the spectrum, and with directed energy can even go against other things that are infrastructure type capabilities.
So he added in an extra word there, this retired lieutenant colonel, this presentation. Not only can their weapons, that's what they are, they're weapons. Not only can they be used against electronics, take away our privacy by looking into our homes, but they can also use it to attack infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is not just, I want to say, your power grid, or the way things work within, I want to say, the way your city runs, for example. It's not just a power grid. It's not just a network of computers. It's not just these things. These things can also be a part of it, but there are smaller things that go along with the infrastructure, like medical, for example. Before we continue, I want to make sure you people understand what he means by infrastructure, especially when it comes to the EMF, or the EMS, as he says.
The term electromagnetic energy is energy that is reflected or emitted from objects in the form of electrical and magnetic waves. The electromagnetic spectrum represents the range of all types of electromagnetic energy, whether it's very low energy radio and microwaves, to visible light, or high energy X-rays. Sources of electromagnetic energy are present all around us, from the sun to devices found in our homes, businesses, and public areas. People are regularly exposed to electromagnetic energy, such as from radios, remote controls, cell phones, electronic appliances, cell phone towers, weather radar systems, or even just standing in the sunlight. We all benefit from this energy through improved communication, convenience, safety, and health. When conducting electronic warfare training in the Pacific Northwest, the Navy's use of electromagnetic energy falls between radio and microwave frequencies, similar to common civilian communication and radar systems, such as cell phones, Bluetooth devices, Wi-Fi technology, television news trucks, microwaves, and commercial boat and weather radar systems. This energy is not harmful unless, like most activities, overexposure occurs. The Pacific Northwest region is home to the third largest concentration of naval forces, whose operators must carry out certain training requirements before deploying. One of the many assets in this region is a specialized type of aircraft dedicated to one of the most technologically advanced areas of the modern battlefield: electronic warfare. Electronic warfare involves the use of electromagnetic energy. Being able to properly use and control the electromagnetic spectrum is critical to the safety and success of the nation's military forces. The EA-18G Growler aircraft, based at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, is the Navy's newest electronic warfare aircraft and improves upon a long-standing tradition of the Navy's ability to disrupt an adversary's ability to target and harm.
Okay, so now that we have a defined view of what the electromagnetic spectrum is, and more of a visual, relating that of what's in our world and what's in theirs, from the way we live to the way they are building advanced weaponry to manipulate these things. So let's continue.
But the purpose of EW is to deny the opponent an advantage in the electromagnetic spectrum ops domain and to ensure friendly use of the electromagnetic ops domain for ourselves.
Now, well, that short little clip, very important. And I'm going to see if you guys can connect the dots with that one.
Well, there's been new developments in the crimes committed by the NSA. That's right. This is not a story about Edward Snowden or where he's going or where he's going to stay. This is about the crimes committed by the NSA, and some people at the Black Hat Conference understand that.
Our nation takes stopping terrorism as one of the most important things.
Freedom!
Exactly.
No, I'm saying I don't trust you.
You lied to Congress. Why would we believe you're not lying to us right now?
Read the Constitution.
I have.
Well, General Alexander has read the Constitution. He just doesn't care what it says. And when he says this is about freedom, he's lying about that as well, just as he lied to Congress. Now, the Black Hat Conference is a place where both hackers and the government go and show each other how to exploit systems because, of course, the government wants to know how to do that themselves. And, of course, there's a legitimate reason for looking at how people break in so you can protect against it. But as Aaron Schwartz has pointed out, the feds fund most of the exploits. The federal government is the biggest creator of malware, and then they use that to scare us into strangling the internet and taking away our internet freedoms. Now, there was another hacker that everybody expected to be presenting there, Barnaby Jack, and he has in past years shown some remarkable things at Black Hat. He was going to talk about how easy it is to hack into medical devices and to even kill people. But of course, that's a multi-billion-dollar industry, medical devices, and it would not serve a lot of people's interest to have that information get out. He died just before the conference under mysterious circumstances.
I'm going to be presenting, or doing a little commentary on a few clips that I had in the original documentary that went up on Facebook and other platforms, but censored by YouTube. So we're just going to play a little bit of information that they don't want you to know.
A medical device that uses biotelemetry, several bait for your own use. Here's a couple that was brought to our attention by a viewer, Jim in Arizona. I think it's intriguing enough to deserve a closer look. Fast Vocal Biotelemetry's business comes from its remote heart monitoring devices. Although they may have been moving into digital diagnostics as well. Now, in mid-September, this stuff got crushed. That's a brutal piece of research from a short.
Okay, so let me stop it right there. Biotelemetry. Biotelemetry is basically technology that's able to read and monitor vital signs of organic biological beings remotely. This guy, Mad Money, had a guest on the show, president of one of these biotelemetry companies. The reason why I wanted to show this clip originally is because of the fact that all the stuff is controlled, obviously, by computers. Now, there are people who are going to be put on hit lists who have heart monitors, pacemakers, all sorts of electronic devices that can just be hacked and shut off. Absolutely government controlled, without a doubt. And a lot of the stuff is based on, guess what? 5G. So I think it's very important to note that the government wasn't doing us a favor by not letting us know that these biomedical devices, these biotelemetry devices, could be hacked by anybody, by hackers, but they just didn't want anybody to know that they could be hacked, period. Now, Denial of service. I want to bring that point back up. The electronic warfare. This lieutenant colonel stated that they can boost and keep their own services and deny other people services. Now, imagine being a whistleblower. You've got biotelemetry devices, medical devices, and you end up having to go do something, or just whatever it may be that may not be in the best interest of the government and of best interest for the people. Well, imagine them just denying you service. Frequency weapon, oh, heart attack, right? Your biotelemetry device is cut off. Hospital doesn't know. You have no other means of getting help because you've relied so much on this one piece of technology in which you were assured would be there to save your life. Imagine that. The government did not want that information out. This hacker was not only going to let people know that it could be done, but it was well within the hands of the government to do something like this. And it's not just that. Denial of service. You'll hear target individuals all the time talk about, my phone was hacked, I can't get on the internet, this and that. I've had my share of nonstop electronic harassment for the past 5 years of my life. And yeah, it's kind of annoying being a video gamer. I've been playing video games on computers for the past 16 years. I know my way around a computer. I know how things work. And everything is done to make sure that internet service is dropped or internet service breaks out, computers are hacked, game files go missing, this sort of stuff like that. And so it's sort of the Chinese water torture. These people will slowly mess with this service, mess with that service, and so hopefully one day you break your computer, kill yourself, go off on a killing spree, something like that, where they can ban guns or whatever. So there's a lot of that going on. They're using that as the electronic age of equivalent of Chinese water torture. I'm not talking about the CIA where they drown you, but the little drop of water that hits your forehead. You're strapped down, little drop of water just tapping on your forehead incrementally over time can break someone's mind. A person will snap, they'll go crazy, they'll give in to interrogation, whatever. And this is the electronic age form of that. This is my own personal experience I'm sharing with you guys. So let's continue on, please.
You see on the bottom of this slide that electronic attack includes actions to prevent or reduce the enemy's effective use of the EMS. We understand that, but I also highlight to you, once again out of joint doctrine in the U.S., that it also is the employment of weapons that use either electromagnetic or directed energy as their primary destructive mechanism.
And speaking of infrastructure, yet again, what's about and attacking electronics and non-electronics and the spying. If this is all bad with Wi-Fi, any kind of Bluetooth, stuff like that. So we're going to be talking about their capabilities with the 5G. But first, let's take a look at what 5G is.
Okay, now this clip is very important. I felt the need not to leave it out, so I'll show it to you in the capacity that I can. Now, this clip, again, it was censored from my documentary, this documentary, by YouTube. Copyrights and all that legal stuff. Yes, on a news presentation from a major news network. And I'm only going to play a small piece of it.
The government, operators and local companies such as Huawei and ZTE are about to launch big 5G trials that will put them at the forefront of equipment production for the new technology. That may be at the expense of the West, where there is concern regarding Asia's 5G progress. A leaked memo from the National Security Council to the White House called for a nationalized 5G network to keep the US ahead of their global competitors.
Now, this is again about 5G technology. How they're saying, everything's going to be automated in your homes, and even the smart cars, going to be driven by 5G technology. Now, also, if you ever get in trouble with law, warrants or anything like that, expect to be driven to the police station. Expect to be harassed in many ways. But I digress. He's speaking about 5G, and he even goes into how the government, especially the intelligence agencies, are pushing this technology. I wonder why.
Now that we know what 5G is, well, technically we know what it can do. We don't know what it is yet, and we really need to get into that. But first, I've got to point out the fact that the US government, the intelligence agencies, pushing for this technology to come out. I'm pretty sure you know where this is going right now, where all this information is headed. But there are many reasons why the intelligence agencies are pushing this technology to come out. And I want you guys to see if you can connect this with why the United States is trying to pull out of the United Nations Human Rights Council. You're gonna see a whole mess of things happen, especially with this 5G. But let's see what this 5G really is.
Our product enables remote wireless detection of human vital signs without the subject's knowledge. While it may seem cool and composed on the outside, his involuntary response will give him away. In addition, live friendly soldiers can be found in dangerous areas without risking personnel for recon. Our system works by generating low-energy millimeter waves. They are able to penetrate through many common materials, including clothing and masonry, and efficiently reflect off optically rough surfaces, and yet they provide a high degree of sensitivity to minute displacements. As the wave reflects from the target, its phase is shifted proportionally to the movement of the target. The phase can be extracted, and the displacement of the target can be demodulated. When the system is aimed at a human's chest, we can see the chest's movement. There are components of chest motion due to heartbeats, breathing, and gross movement. Using signal processing, we eliminate noise and motions due to gross movement and analyze only those due to heartbeats and breathing. Since the antenna has to be well aimed at the subject's chest, we employ cameras to identify and track the subject, and a pan-tilt base to move the whole assembly for constant aiming. A color camera locks onto the subject's face, learns a hue histogram of the face, and performs mean shift tracking. At the same time, a depth camera segments the image based on the depth of the target so that only pixels at the right depth are considered for processing. The millimeter wave system itself can be seen here. First, and most importantly, is the millimeter wave sensor and antenna assembly, which is what gathers the in-phase and quadrature components of the signal and returns it to the computer for processing. This unique low-power, all-solid-state millimeter wave sensor itself can be battery-operated. Then, there are the cameras, which perform the real-time detection and tracking of a human subject and return the data to the pan and tilt base, which is what moves the entire assembly and follows the subject as he moves around and maintains the aim at his chest. In the following demonstration, the screen is split into 3 parts. In the top left is the system assembly, which shall be moving to follow the subject. In the top right is the subject as seen by the color tracking camera, where the oval and rectangle are the location and scale of his head, and the purple circle is the location the antenna is aiming. In the bottom half is the measure of displacement as it is being calculated by the computer in real time. The red circles represent calculated heartbeats. Also on the graph are the locations of heartbeats obtained from an ECG that was gathered simultaneously, shown in green. This is a ground truth used for verification and was not used at all in the algorithm. The sensor starts off aimed at the subject's chest. While he is seated, the subject holds his breath for a while in order to demonstrate that individual heartbeats are visible. As the subject stands up, the system follows his movement and maintains good aim. Now the subject demonstrates the fidelity of the system during lateral motion. Here the subject demonstrates the accuracy of the system during large gross movement. The subject's backward movement is larger than that due to heartbeat and respiration, as is evidenced by the scale of displacement on the bottom of the screen. Even with such large movements, the system continues to process the data with good accuracy. The system works on various body types such as males and females with larger and smaller frames and builds. Although our system is currently intended for homeland and national security applications, this novel technology has a wide range of applications for standoff monitoring of non-stationary targets, including home health care, collision avoidance, condition monitoring of operating machinery, and non-destructive evaluation.
Where high performance and true 3D through-the-wall imaging are critical to mission success. With the Xaver 800 interface, you have an intuitive and detailed situational awareness picture clearly presented on a real-time integrated display. The 3D view enables the user to effectively track and understand the orientation of multiple moving or non-moving living objects. You take actions on the basis of a targeted reality picture. The top-down view provides rapid information on target location while displaying details of the static objects so that room layout and structure can be accurately understood. The side view delivers precise information for measuring the height of objects. The history view clearly tracks objects and movement patterns on a calibrated grid. The Xaver 800's rich feature set includes additional indications, views, and menu options, along with recording capabilities for post-mission analysis and debriefing.
Police use radars to see inside homes. At least 50 U.S. law enforcement agencies are now equipped with a radar device that allows them to detect human movement through the walls of houses. The device, known as Range R, operates as a highly sensitive Doppler motion detector. It can detect human movement from a distance of up to 50 feet. The device beams radar waves through a wall and calculates the distance of the target by analyzing reflected waves. The device has a 160-degree conical field of view and can detect movements as slight as human breathing. It works through brick as well as concrete, but cannot penetrate metal. Use of technology raises both legal and privacy issues, and a 2001 U.S. Supreme Court ruling barred authorities from using high-tech sensors to scan inside someone's home without first obtaining a search warrant.
So 5G is just another way for the government and corporations to look directly at you in your homes. How many of you saw that coming? Let me get a show of hands. Like, wow, well, really? So, I mean, most people don't understand that any technology that is handed to us as a population, as citizens of these nations, is only going to be to spy on us at minimal. But this sort of technology has way more applications, way more sinister capabilities, and I'm going to dive deep into the 5G rabbit hole as this movie series continues. But I want people to automatically bridge that connection. 5G is the same thing as millimeter wave beams. 5G, millimeter wave radar. And so basically microwaves, okay? These are microwaves. There are all sorts of things that can be done with microwaves. So I'm quite speechless. The voyeuristic. You've got a combination of not just paranoid people. I don't know how these people can be so paranoid. All these terrorists this, terrorists that, you know, all these false flag and psychological war propaganda, false flag, false flag, false flag. The only terrorists there are in this world are those created by the government. That's a fact. I don't care who doesn't like hearing that. But how are you going to be so paranoid and so voyeuristic? Because a lot of this is very perverse. With this kind of technology, you know, they already have this technology. They've had it for years on a governmental level. I mean, there's all this talk about the pedophiles. As you know, I hate pedophiles with a passion. And that is the core of the people who are running the world. You want these people spying on your every movement? Because this 5G is going to be on every light post in the world if you let them roll it out. Walking down the street, they're going to be able to see through your clothing, see how much money you have in your pocket. They're going to be able to see if you have a gun. And they don't want you having a gun. They're just going to microwave beam it, turn that sucker hot, make you want to toss it away or something. There's so many applications for this stuff. And just immediately alerting police. The police state is going to go nuts. This isn't about internet speed. 5G is not about internet speed. This is surveillance police state. All the way through and through. And I mean, what is it really all boiled down to when you talk about these pedophilic individuals of these cults that run the government? Well, they're going to be able to watch you bathe your children. They're going to be able to watch you have sex. They're going to be able to do anything. And when you are powerful, corrupt, and no one can check you and tell you what to do, what are you most likely to do? What are you most likely to do to someone else?
Hello, hello, we are the NSA, and it's too late for us to change our ways. Emails and texts, we listen to your phone. Webcams, laptops, we're watching you at home. But terrorists are not what we pursue. The truth is that we're only watching you. We watch Americans masturbate all day. Turn on your cameras and watch you jerk away. We watch Americans searching porn online. CCTV, see you naked all the time. You search, we watch, you hunt for big black box. Ginger titties, your searches come to us. Facebook, stalkers, old men with lanky dicks, tough girls, horse porn, and your favorite cake are gifts. There might be bombs, we're too busy over here. As you jerk off to fat, milk-shaven queer, we watch Americans masturbate all day. Turn on your cameras and watch you jerk away. Executive order for Homeland, record Americans with their junk in hand.
This is part 2 of the Know Your Enemy's Weapons documentary. So we must realize that this electronic warfare or this full spectrum surveillance. It's full spectrum dominance. That is the goal for this whole scenario. And we need to understand that this stuff is dangerous. They want to spy on us in our homes, bombard us with radiation nonstop, because that's what it is. They can call it signal, they can call it frequency, they can call it whatever they want. It's radiation. And the government is no, I want to say, stranger to radiation experiments. How often do we got to hear about the cancer rate rising? It's ridiculous. They think we don't know what's going on. These corporations, government tell you, oh, these cell phones are no danger. Oh, these cell towers are no danger. That's complete crap. So let's start off with the history of this subject here, as all this technology came out of the Cold War.
Point out that with us are many family members of citizens who were subject to human radiation experiment and some of the advocates who represent them. Their presence signifies that this administration's commitment to meeting our obligations of power, our willingness to share information, to respect the right of people to know the facts, the responsibility to limit secrecy, and that which is truly essential, and that is to make those who were wronged and harmed whole. Why did we do this? Why did the President direct his administration to open the doors on human radiation experiments? I believe that this openness puts us in a position as a nation to close many chapters of the Cold War, just as the President did by ending nuclear weapons testing for the United States, as the United States and Russia did in pointing our missiles away from each other, and in dismantling warheads and extending the NPT. And today, another step of that openness is coming clean on the human radiation experience. The President committed to do this without knowing where it would lead or whether the records would reveal government mistakes, cause embarrassments, or lawsuits. He did this because he believed that it was the right thing to do. Today, the President receives from Dr. Fadin and her colleagues on the President's Advisory Committee a report that tells the story of radiation experiments involving human subjects funded by the government. We did not realize when we began this journey the difficulty of the charge given these citizens. Eminent ethicists, physicians, scientists, citizens, even lawyers. And in the end, for the committee, their actual working days to review the documents going back for decades.
Secretary O'Leary, Attorney General Reno, Secretary Shalala, other members of the Human Radiation Interagency Working Group. On behalf of my 13 colleagues on the Advisory Committee, I am proud to submit our final report. We worked extremely hard over the last 18 months in order to inform you and the American people about what really happened to radiation research subjects in the Cold War period. We have found that wrongs were indeed committed. The rights and interests of individuals and communities were sometimes ignored. We found that government officials and physicians who had the trust of the public abused that trust.
We discovered soon after I entered office that with the specter of an atomic war looming like Armageddon, far nearer than it does today, the United States government actually did carry out on our citizens experiments involving radiation. That's when I ordered the creation of this committee. Dr. Fadin and the others did a superb job. They enlisted many of our nation's most significant and important medical and scientific ethicists. They had to determine first whether experiments conducted or sponsored by our government between 1944 and 1974 met the ethical and scientific standards of that time and of our time, and then they had to see to it that our research today lives up to nothing less than our highest values and our most deeply held beliefs. Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body.
Okay, so let's talk about directed energy weapons used as a weapon.
You see on the bottom of this slide that electronic attack includes actions to prevent or reduce the enemy's effective use of the EMS. We understand that, but I also highlight to you, once again out of joint doctrine in the U.S., that it also is the employment of weapons that use either electromagnetic or directed energy as their primary destructive mechanism.
Now, they're talking about using directed energy as a destructive method. You mean something a little bit like this?
New details on a series of bizarre attacks. Dozens of unexplained illnesses, including head injuries, forced the U.S. to bring home diplomatic staff from China and the U.S. Embassy in Cuba. Speculation at the time was that it was some sort of sonic attack. But now the scientist who led the investigation tells the New York Times the main culprit is likely some kind of microwave weapon. CNN's Patrick Ottman is following the story from Havana. So, Patrick, what happened at the U.S. Embassy that led authorities to suspect that it was indeed an attack? And now we're talking about these, a microwave weapon.
It's still very much a diplomatic mystery, but let me walk you through what is a very complicated case. It all began November 2016, right after the U.S. presidential election, and that is when U.S. diplomats based here in Havana said they begin to experience these really strange symptoms, often at night, sometimes while they're in bed, asleep in their homes or their hotel rooms here in Cuba, and they said that they would feel nausea, hear loud sounds, hearing loss, but if they got up out of bed, if they left the room where they were in, it would stop. If they walked back into where they had felt this incident, this attack as they described it, it would start again. So they felt that they were being targeted with some sort of mysterious beam of energy. Initially, they complained to Cuban authorities about what they felt they were being targeted with sonic weapons, and these are weapons that do exist, usually used for crowd control. But experts consulted by CNN at the time, said that sonic weapons really don't work like that. They don't usually cause someone to hear a noise, and they're much too large to be used in this capacity. Now we have scientists that have met and helped treat some of those diplomats coming out and saying that perhaps it's a microwave weapon. This is also a weapon, but much more portable, that shoots a beam of energy, and it can be pinpointed in the way these diplomats described both here in Cuba and in China, and that it can actually cause people to think they're hearing sounds, but this is just a symptom of this beam of energy that's being directed at people, and it can cause these kinds of symptoms. One of the researchers told CNN it causes concussion without actually causing a concussion, the immaculate concussion, they said. So again, we don't know very little bit about these weapons because so few countries use them. Cuban authorities say there's no evidence, though, that the diplomats were ever targeted here. They have called on the U.S. to release more information about this. So right now, it may be one piece of still a very big puzzle, Fred.
It's not just a very disturbing high-pitched noise, but there might even be voices or a message, a continual message that people have been victimized by, this sound. There's this kind of messaging coming from it. What more do we know about that, or who is adding any credence to that?
There are a number of It's really fascinating stuff. Now, the Cuban officials here said we would never allow this to be used, but of course, in a country like Cuba, it's impossible to imagine that a third actor could come in and use these weapons without the Cuban officials knowing. They have allowed the FBI to come in. They have allowed Canadian investigators, because there are some Canadian diplomats that have complained of similar symptoms, and they've turned up nothing. But in a way, you read about these weapons and these weapons programs that did exist, and it's kind of the perfect weapon because it leaves no trace.
And to go back to the idea of radiation experimentation and weapons testing, there has been a lot of that done right before our very eyes. And none of us have realized it. We've seen these sicknesses and in people. You know, of course, the cancer rate rising, and all this stuff is given over to false reasons, excuses, it's blatant lies about what's going on. Here's an example. Let's go into this.
Dozens of dead blackbirds have fallen from the sky over a small Arkansas town for the second year in a row. That the town of Beebe has seen this before, however, doesn't make the deaths of dozens of blackbirds any less odd, maybe even more so. ABC Arkansas affiliate KATV reported that a radar image showed a large mass over Beebe a few hours before midnight Saturday. Then the birds began falling from the sky, just like last year. Emily Nichols, a police dispatcher in Beebe, told ABC Radio that she received multiple calls, just that the blackbirds are falling again and that they have found blackbirds on their streets where they live or at churches, Nicholas said. Animal Care and Control was called out about 7 p.m., a few hours earlier than last year. Horace Taylor of Animal Care and Control in Beebe told ABC Radio, "Well, there was just birds falling down on the street and people dodged and missed them," Taylor said, "and we were down in the streets picking them up. We got a call out by our chief and we all came out trying to pick them up off the street." Lieutenant Brian Duke of the Beebe Police Department told ABC this year wasn't nearly as bad as last year when the birds covered the streets of Beebe. This year they were concentrated in a smaller area and the birds were cleaned up quickly. There haven't been any reports of people being hit by the falling birds. Around the same time last year, thousands of dead fish also turned up in the Arkansas River, prompting conspiracies about the end of the world, poison, and environmental catastrophes. I did some research into birds, but particularly this blackbird that's predominant in the Arkansas area around this time of the year, and it looks like that birds, most birds, especially flying species of birds, have a naturally occurring magnetic spheres in their beaks that gives them a sense of direction so they know which way they're flying, north or south, to guide them on when their migration patterns are.
Just before folks in Beebe rang in the new year, many witnessed an uncanny resemblance to the Hitchcock movie, The Birds. 2,000 blackbirds fell from the sky off Wynwood Drive, covering about a mile, leaving quite the mess to clean up. THV's Katharina Yancey has the details on our top story from the Information Center. Katharina?
Ashley, folks I spoke with initially thought the birds were poisoned because they are what they call a nuisance around this time every year. But they are surprised to hear it's more of a mystery.
Millions every night. You look up at the sky, it's just black. So, and then last night about 10:30, I come out here and seen a bird drop.
In a matter of hours on New Year's Eve, thousands of birds fell from the sky to their death.
And I just immediately called Mom because I had to go to work, and I said, "You've got to come get the kids and get the dog because I don't know what's going on, but I don't want them messing with any of them." It was horrible. You could not even get down the road without running over hundreds. It was that bad.
The mystery is unraveling like scenes from a movie. Dozens of U.S. Environmental Service crews spent the day picking up the birds, walking between homes and climbing on people's roofs with protective hazmat suits and breathing masks.
Nobody knows. You know, I asked these guys who was out here picking them up, and they don't seem to know anything. Nobody knows anything. Just kind of freaked everybody out.
Officials with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission flew over the area and determined it's a 1-mile stretch. There are a variety of dead blackbirds, mostly red-winged, and a duck was also found. No one has been evacuated because ADEQ's air quality test came back clean for toxins.
And yeah, so now that we can put the dots together, because there are no pathogens with these mass whale beachings, mass fish die-offs, mass bird killings. That's exactly what they were, killings. The Navy is a big part of this. Naval research into frequency weapons. And yes, the U.S. Navy, which is patrolling the waters of the globe. I mean, in this modern day and age, who needs a navy? Nobody really has navies except for the U.S. The U.S. is heavy with Navy personnel. There's a Navy base everywhere across the globe, and the U.S. is acting like the world's police, but no, they're really mounting up for this mass attack, and this will be said again later on to go with another aspect of this as to why every area on the planet is being encircled by the U.S. and Five Eye countries. It's not just United States of America, but it's the Five Eyes. So let's go into the technology, since they want to go ahead and come out with it.
DoD's active denial technology and future solid-state active denial technology system will produce a focused beam of directed energy to provide our troops a non-lethal option to stop, deter, and turn back suspicious individuals across the range of military operations. Active denial technology uses radio frequency millimeter waves at a frequency of 95 gigahertz. Traveling at the speed of light, the millimeter wave directed energy engages the subject, penetrating the skin to a depth of only about 1/64th of an inch. The beam produces an intolerable heating sensation, compelling the targeted individual to instinctively move. Applications include crowd control, perimeter security, patrol and convoy protection, and other defensive and offensive operations from both fixed site or mobile platforms. While the active denial system advanced concept technology demonstration succeeded in demonstrating a large-scale version of active denial technology, a smaller scale, more mobile version is being developed by the U.S. Army and the DoD's non-lethal weapons program, utilizing solid-state technology. This system will demonstrate and prove out the critical technologies for a follow-on tactical system, which will be an adjunct system that can be installed on a range of tactical or support vehicles. It will have an azimuth drive for full 360-degree coverage, E-steering and azimuth for fine steering control, and full E-steering and elevation. With an invisible beam, speed of light targeting, and silent operation, it can be used in a wide range of operations, such as enhanced combat mobility in dense urban areas where it quickly moves civilians obstructing vehicle mobility. Or it can be used to safely deter unarmed but suspicious civilians observing U.S. forces. At entry control points, it provides an additional layer of response for dealing with potentially threatening targets and potential crowd violence. It can be quickly de-escalated by targeting the leader, or if necessary, by panning across the entire crowd. Since the beam can penetrate window glass, it can also be used for non-lethal engagement of suspicious vehicles. The SS-80T will be a lightweight, non-lethal anti-personnel system.
Yes, and we have the active aerial denial system. This has actually been made public, but it's been public for quite some time. Early in my research on this stuff, dark energy weapons information was constantly being changed on Wikipedia. The government is not like Wikipedia, especially the NSA or the rest of the clandestine criminal cabal organizations. So this has been known technology for quite some time. It's known. Again, this goes back over to the Cold War.
In 1953, began to bombard the U.S. Embassy in Moscow with electromagnetic radiation in the microwave spectrum, but the fact was kept secret from the embassy employees. U.S. Ambassador Stossel contracted a blood disease, bleeding eyes, nausea, and eventually lymphoma. He and other employees eventually died as a result of the microwave attacks. Dr. Henry Kissinger sent a secret memo giving hazard pay to embassy personnel in the 1970s. Before the attacks, the USSR had met with the U.S. to try to head off an arms race in electromagnetic weapons, but were refused. It is possible that the U.S. government took advantage of the situation and used the embassy staff as microwave guinea pigs. The Department of Defense's Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, set up a lab at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research and participated in Project Pandora. Scientists began zapping monkeys to study the biological effects of highly concentrated microwave frequencies. Similar studies were conducted at the VA Hospital in Kansas City, University of Rochester, Brooks Air Force Base, Johns Hopkins, MIT, the MITRE Corporation, University of Pennsylvania, and other domestic and foreign labs.
As shameful as this technology is, it gets deeper. We're going to get deep in the rabbit hole on this one. So the other applications for direct energy weapons, can you imagine what that could be?
The word government, you break it down. People say this word every day almost, and yet they've never looked at the etymological roots of the word. It comes from the Latin verb gubernare. Once again, no V in classical Latin. No V, okay? So again, V's were rendered as either B's or P's in classical Latin language. So you could write this in what would be more modern Latin as gubernare with a V. But in classical Latin or ancient Latin, there is no V, so it would have been rendered with a B, gubernare. Now, what's the election of a governor called? It's called a gubernatorial election. Gubernatorial. Gubernare is in there. Okay? Gubernare means to control. The verb gubernare in Latin means to control. The Latin noun mens, which is where the second part of the word ment is derived from, means mind. Okay? So you put these together, and the word government actually literally, from its etymological roots, means to control the mind. Or in other words, mind control. Now, I'm going to put something else up here for a moment. The etymological origin of the English suffix ment, M-E-N-T, is often debated in this etymological breakdown. All right? And I've gotten stuff about this constantly, and I've told people I'm not interested in hearing about it anymore. I know where this comes from. I know why the creators of the English language made it so. Made it like this. Okay? It is overwhelmingly clear by people who have studied linguistics and the origins of words, okay, in English from ancient languages, that the creators of the English language deliberately chose the Latin noun mens, meaning mind, to represent or mean in English the state of or the condition of. And this was done in direct keeping with the first principle of natural law, as we've already discussed, the principle of mentalism, which demonstrates that in order for any particular thing, event, or circumstance, any state or condition to exist in manifested reality, it, as it currently does, which is known as the plane of effects, it must have first existed in the plane of causality, or the mental realm, the mind. Okay? We've already looked at that principle of natural law. So, anything that ends in ment, the original etymological derivation means that it was made that way first by a state of mind which led to its creation in physical reality. Okay? Any word you can think of that ends in ment, meaning the state of or the condition of, means it happened in mind first, and therefore it led to the state of or the condition of in physical reality. Okay? So, when I say that government means mind control, it literally does, and that is an accurate etymological breakdown. Okay? The word mens was deliberately chosen for specific reasons. And I just explained the reason of that meaning, the state of or the condition of. And many people want to hotly contest that. I'm telling you outright, they're wrong. They don't understand why that was chosen. Mens, meaning mind, was chosen deliberately to mean the state of or the condition of.
Yeah. Starting like some real tinfoil hat stuff right about now, huh? Yeah, well, you're gonna find these tinfoil hat wearing people knew something. But let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth, shall we?
So the point is, there is a relationship, and in fact, you must have this physical network operating to have the cyber network and electronic warfare. How we protect that network, as well as in terms of how we deal with our adversary, how we attack the network, is very important in terms of what we think about electronic warfare in the 21st century. We can also have cognitive effects. We know that we've had some discussions about the relationship of electronic warfare and information ops for a long time. I'd like to focus here on the influence operations, which is where we're talking about the employment of capabilities to alter behaviors. And so when we do this, we're trying to affect perceptions, we're trying to affect knowledge. We want to protect our own knowledge. We think about that as operational security, psychological operations, or military deception. You see a list there of EW capabilities that can support all of those different influence type operations. So electronic warfare is a means to conduct information operations, but it is not in and of itself information operations, because it can create physical effects and cyber effects as well. We know that EW is important for net-enabled operations. We sometimes have referred to this as command and control warfare, or C2 warfare. That's because it's the electromagnetic spectrum that ties together the sensor to the shooter.
Okay, so there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth, just like I promised. This is really evil stuff. We pay our tax dollars for our own imprisonment. And it's the invisible prison, the matrix, in which it's being created for us. But the government's always been interested in mind control. Of course, that's what government means. But the research goes so far back since the electronic age began.
A team is investigating certain common perceptions of the inner mind.
We'll be taking a baseline recording first.
Right now, they're looking at the electromagnetic brain patterns seen in people having the near-death experience. The research is led by Dr. Michael Persinger.
Basically, at any given time, all experience is due to those portions of the brain that are most metabolically active. If we can simulate that by applying complex, meaningful magnetic fields to the brain, we can also induce those experiences.
This experiment is testing the idea that mystical perceptions and paranormal experiences can be turned on at will, not by hypnosis or shamanic drumming, but by a scientist, stimulating nerve activity in the brain.
Headphones on. So they don't split off. Okay. These machines aren't on.
The volunteer sits blindfolded in a soundproof chamber. This sensory deprivation allows the mind to focus on electromagnetic patterns transmitted across the brain through this modified crash helmet.
If you feel anything change with the electrodes.
They're able to simulate the exact brain patterns that occur in near-death experiences.
Is that comfortable? Yeah.
Dr. Persinger hopes the research will benefit psychotherapy.
We tried to evoke the fragments that compose the near-death experience and other mystical experiences, such as detachment, feelings of moving through a tunnel, hearing voices, the sense of a presence, usually on the left side. Our major thrust is ultimately to apply this to dealing with things such as psychological depression.
After a while, I remember feeling that there was someone else in the room with me, almost looking over my left shoulder. It was all I could do to not turn my head and want to look.
If you stimulate the deep portions of the temporal lobe, so you can get very, very vivid imagery, and the emotional commitment or the emotional sensation that something is profound, real, cosmically real, and personally significant.
It's a male voice, but it's like really, really far away. As if you can just sort of like catch a tone you can't really hear. You can tell that it's someone talking. You can distinguish that, but you can't make out any kind of words or anything like that.
What we've been doing recently is generating words as magnetic patterns. And even though the person isn't hearing it through their ears, their brain is interpreting it. So they're actually having fragments of experiences as if they're hearing it when in actual fact it cannot be.
These experiences are so strong, they're utterly real for the person who has them. They can be as profound as a religious conversion, yet we can generate them with a machine. These mind games are beginning to shed their secrets. The scientist becomes the shaman. But what are the limits? What else can people be made to believe?
But one thing that's really clear, you can control the person's experiences and they don't know they're being controlled. That's why this technology is a potentially powerful one and has a two-edge to its sword.
As a tool of science, this technology may bring us valuable new understandings of the obscure depths of the human mind. But there's a dark side. In the wrong hands, could it become an instrument of power, a means of oppression? If we're not careful, will mind games one day become mind control?
Dr. Persinger is saying is that virtually any mental state can be artificially injected into a human brain from an exterior source. The most frightening thing is that the means for doing this already exists in a fully operational form on a worldwide basis. Quote, "The power levels for these amplitudes are similar to those associated with the signals generated globally by radio and communication system. Within the last 2 decades, a potential has emerged which was improbable, but which is now marginally feasible. This potential is the technical capability to influence directly the major portion of the approximately 6 billion brains of the human species by generating neural information within a physical medium within which all members of the species are immersed." Unquote. Dr. Persinger's message, minus the jargon, is that the entire human race can be controlled through the use of electromagnetic influence piggyback on television and radio networks or other technological means.
Okay, so there we have Dr. Michael Persinger, who is, well, mind-controlled scientist. And before I say anything else, you might want to check out his lecture called No More Secrets. You can find it on YouTube. And that will give you a little bit of a head start if you want to know what my next documentary, well, actually the last documentary we'll be covering, because I'm going to get to some other things before I get to that. The relationship of the cloud mind. But anyhow, yeah, so imagine the mind control. Okay, this is electromagnetic patterns put into a person's head. No words actually heard, but the information gets there, gets into the brain patterns. Injected memories. So we can safely assume that there's a lot of memory implantation being done to people around the world. As this stuff can be done on piggyback signals, your TV, cell phones, whatever, what have you, okay? These electromagnetic signals that adds patterns are subliminally brainwashing people around the world. Now, how would this be used? Well, if the government wants to have false witnesses in the court case, a witness recalling false memories, that's one way. That way they can actually pass a lie detector test because they actually believe these events are going on. And we have people being scared out of their homes. Oh, my house is haunted. If somebody rich wants a certain real estate or piece of property, they'll do the whole Scooby-Doo bit. I am not lying to you people. This goes on. People experiencing alien abductions. Now, I'm not saying aliens don't exist. I do believe that we're not alone in the universe, and that would be impossible when you think of the math. But again, a lot of this technology has been reverse engineered from Roswell spaceship crash, and you know, the other applications, there's so many applications for this. I can't go through them all. You know, this is Project Bluebeam technology. They want to fake an alien invasion with all the stuff they're setting up. I mean, they can do it. So, remember Michael Aquino, the government child trafficking pedophile? Well, he actually wrote something called Mind Wars. Let's hear a little bit about that.
Now, the importance of these things, again, from a mind war, you know, I was talking about these things as one of the psychons that we use in mind war. All of these frequencies take place at the sub-audio level, meaning that when these frequencies are being projected or broadcast, you could be in a room full of alpha, for example, and you wouldn't hear a thing. Or you could be in a room full of beta and not hear a thing. These things are all below your auditory level, but, and this is the important point, the human brain resonates with these brain waves if they reach it externally, which they can not just through your ears, but through your skin, through your skull, any medium really. So if you have a bunch of grouchy people, to simplify this, and put them together in a room, and you want them to start cooperating and agreeing on something, first thing you do is switch on an electromagnetic generator and dial it to alpha and blanket the room with alpha. And without any of them really being aware of what's happened, they'll start relaxing and turning into a more positive frame of mind. That's just one of the examples. The research that we have done in PsyOp into these colors have led us to the very interesting discovery that the colors by themselves will trigger a different reaction in a human being, which means that if you are exposed to red radiation, and again, we're talking about the electromagnetic spectrum here, so it's not just that you're looking at something red and that you have a visual response to it. We're talking about the actual radiation, the wavelengths of this color from the EMS itself that are coming into your brain. The red wavelengths incline you towards anger, and again, it's not because red is bloody or anything like this. It's just how red makes you angry, blue makes you intelligent and thoughtful, and green is relaxation. So once again, if you have a room full of people and you're already blanketing it with alpha radiation, you also want to dial up the blue. So what you see here is that as you're turning these electromagnetic and electrochemical cycons and bringing them into play, and there are about 12 or 13 of them that I go into in the book, what you're doing is to address the mental state of mind of everybody who's subjected to these. And what you're trying to do is to get them to stop being angry and stop being combative and become as intelligent as they can and as cooperative as they can. And what's also funny about this, you're not just doing this to what you thought were the bad guys. You're doing it to your people too. Most of these things are very omnidirectional, and most of them cannot be stopped, because this kind of electromagnetic radiation is very, very penetrating. We are literally at the point now where scientific investigation is breaking these things down into actual parts of the electromagnetic spectrum and seeing what happens when you dose a human being, so to speak, with these areas of electromagnetic influence. Magnetism is another one of those interesting ones. Magnetic frequency, or fMRI, is now a very interesting area of research. They've been doing it at Yale and some other universities out here, and probably several over in Britain as well. But you actually have a sensitivity to certain kinds of magnetism. We do have some magnetic materials in your body that are very fine and very delicate. These are, you might say, a sort of a human counterpart to what some birds have when they're using magnetic fields to navigate and so on. Bear in mind, of course, that we're talking again about the human body as an electromagnetic machine. And if you look at an electrical wave in the electromagnetic spectrum, you might say that it's going up and down, and what's going right and left is the magnetic wave. So for every electrical wave, there's a magnetic counterpart. And this all, not to go too far afield here, but these are the sorts of things that were getting Albert Einstein fascinated when he was trying to come up with his unified field theory, when he was trying to take all of electromagnetism and figure out that this was sort of the machinery of the entire universe, and that somewhere in here you could find things like gravity. But in any case, when you look at magnetism, you're looking at, again, a form of radiation that is different from electrical radiation, but it's still a wave phenomenon that way. And we, of course, are surrounded by it all the time. We live in a sea of this stuff, we have it everywhere we go today. We're in a very electronic society. And magnetic waves and magnetic fields, of course, are much more pervasive and much harder to stop in some ways than just simple electrical broadcasts. But bringing this down again to mind war. In about 2010, as I discovered, MIT neuroscientists discovered that application of magnetic fields to the right temporal lobe of the brain by means of non-invasive technique called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, can temporarily disrupt an individual's ability to make judgments based on previously learned morality. This is really quite something, because we tend to make judgments, and again, this is that pattern thinking thing. We have a moral overlay on whether we think something is good or bad from what we've learned. This is the moral decision-making process by which we judge goodness or badness in things. So you can see how important this is. Entire religions are built on the ability to proclaim what is good and bad. So if you can take an electromagnet and stick it next to somebody's head and switch it on, and suddenly you sort of poof this out of his decision-making process, you're going to have a human being who is faced with making decisions without there being any moral qualities to them whatever.
Okay, so there we have the former General Michael Aquino, former head of the NSA, and wow, the things they said and spoke so casually about, and on that note, the whole being casual about it is the conditioning. No, it's okay. Yeah, we've got this sort of stuff. No, we're the government. We're in good hands. While this child trafficking pedophile who got away with all of his crimes because he had a security clearance. That maybe because he also had mind control, but then again, I think the Piper used that on the children. You know what I mean? So, let's go on to the next point here.
As you see here, the sense, orient, decide, act, or the famous John Boyd OODA loop. If you lose your EMS, you lose situational awareness, you lose your ability to link operational centers, and you lose your ability at the tactical level to integrate those capabilities that allow you to do those net-enabled or net-centric operations. And from a command and control warfare standpoint, you can use electronic warfare to disrupt sensors, to manipulate the data, or degrade the systems completely, or completely degrade or eliminate the connectivity. So our ability to protect against that is important, and that's an important part of what we do in the electronic warfare business, but also that's a capability that we have in terms of how we might deal with an adversary. I have a list of fundamental EW principles. My intent here is not to read these principles to you, but to invite you to read it. It's in a paper that the Association of Old Crows has published on 21st century electronic warfare. Just want to highlight that we look at the electromagnetic spectrum as maneuver space, that we look at electronic warfare to create effects in the physical, informational, and cognitive domains, and that we do that by using electronic systems to control electromagnetic spectrum. We are advocating that we not only worry about electronic attack and electronic protect, but nowadays we must think about the electromagnetic spectrum control, and we need to add that to our list of elements along with electronic warfare support. We want to remind ourselves that electronic warfare provides freedom of action in all domains, and it's critical to the ability to do cyberspace operations, because the physical networks on which the cyber networks ride are protected by electronic warfare or can be attacked through electronic warfare operations.
Okay, so in this electronic warfare scenario, it's all about information. Information. The best definition for mind control is the control of information, or control of the flow of information. If you can destroy or manipulate cyber components, computers, whatnot, and I want to stress this point because a lot of people have been framed for having, let's say, secret information, secret documents that were not supposed to be in their hands. This is how they get the good agents who want to talk about things and want to go to the media, and they will scoop up these good people, a few good people in the government who want to protect the country. And they'll scoop these people up. They will get geniuses on the computer, people who have great skills that they want to use. What do, they attack these people, put child porn on their computer, have FBI kick down the door, 10 minutes later, and then they've got a scenario of, okay, work for us or we'll put you in prison for the rest of your life. They don't want any hackers out there that can challenge this system. So, I mean, again, implantation of information wherever they see fit, so they can use it, whether it's on your computer or in your very mind. So, well, let's go further into it.
General Mike Aquino wrote From PSYOP to Mind War with Colonel Paul E. Vallely, The Psychology of Victory. He discusses the use of psychotronic weapons or electronic weapons that influence the mind. Capitulation could be induced without firing a shot by using signals piggybacked on broadcasts of radio, TV, microwave communications to influence through subliminal suggestion, holograms, voice-to-skull and silent sound technologies to manipulate the feelings and thoughts of the target population. Behavior modification is a key component of peace enforcement, and modification will be directed at the American people.
Okay, yeah. So, I want to go ahead and say a few things about the signals. Now, there are so many terminologies for this stuff. The radiation, many forms of radiation that they use can be modulated to do anything they want it to do. And a term that people should use is psychoactive signals, because a psychoactive signal is a signal that interfaces with the mind. So these are psychoactive signals, and there are many forms. I'm telling you, any of the frequency spectrums, microwave to radio to all the way down to high frequency, to low frequency, extreme low frequency, ELF. You've heard that terminology, ELF. That's going to show itself back in my documentary, so that's going to be something that you can hear a lot. So let's start in with the science.
Dr. Alan Fry, a biophysicist at GE's Advanced Electronics Center, Cornell University, and a contractor for the Office of Naval Research, discovered in 1958 that the auditory system responds to electromagnetic energy in a portion of the radio frequency spectrum at low power densities, well below that necessary for biological damage. The human auditory system and a table radio, he said, may be 1 order of magnitude apart in sensitivity in a portion of the radio frequency spectrum. Fry proposed stimulating the nervous system without the damage caused by electrodes. He wrote 2 papers, Microwave Auditory Effect and the Applications, and Human Auditory Response to Modulated Electromagnetic Energy. Dr. Fry's work had obvious implications for covert operations. He synchronized pulse microwaves with the myocardial rhythm of a frog's heart. The heart stopped beating. Dr. Fry had perfected the induction of heart seizures by beamed electromagnetics. He microwaved cats and found that stimulation of the hypothalamus had a powerful effect on emotions. Fry found that human subjects exposed to 1310 MHz to 2982 MHz microwaves at average power densities of 0.4 to 2 milliwatts per cubic centimeter perceived auditory sounds. The peak power densities were on the order of 200 to 300 milliwatts per cubic centimeter, and the pulse repetition frequencies varied from 200 to 400 hertz. Dr. Fry referred to this auditory phenomenon as RF, or radio frequency sound. The sensation occurred instantaneously at average incident power densities well below that necessary for known biological damage, and appeared to originate from within or near the back of the head. Fry was reluctant to experiment on humans, but others, particularly paperclip scientists, were not. Dr. Ross Addy worked at UCLA and rigged the brains of lab animals to transmit to a radio receiver which shot back signals to a device that sparked any behavior desired by the researcher. Dr. Addy worked closely with émigré Nazi scientists after World War II. Addy determined that emotional states and behavior can be remotely influenced merely by placing a subject in an electromagnetic field. By directing a carrier frequency to stimulate the brain and using amplitude modulation to shape the wave to mimic a desired EEG frequency, he was able to impose a 4.5 CPS theta rhythm on his subjects and put them to sleep. Dr. Joseph Sharp and Ellen Fry experimented with microwaves seeking to transmit spoken words directly into the audio cortex via a pulsed microwave analog of the speaker's sound vibration. Indeed, Fry's work in this field, dating back to 1960, gave rise to the so-called Fry effect, which is now more commonly referred to as microwave hearing. Within the Pentagon, this ability is known as artificial telepathy. Addy and others have compiled an entire library of frequencies and pulsation rates which can affect the mind and nervous system.
So I've given a list of gaps and shortfalls for you to consider. We need to make sure that people understand that electronic warfare is critical to national security. We need to address some doctrinal shortfalls, specifically in terms of electromagnetic spectrum control and attack. We need to look at our ability to have a workforce to do these things in the future, because we really have significantly reduced our production of electronic warfare specialists, both in the military and in industry. We need to do leadership development to make sure that we have people in key positions that understand electronic warfare.
So he says that we need to have a workforce of people to utilize these technologies. Now, when you talk about a workforce, I mean, this isn't just military personnel. This isn't just covert ops here. These people have to enslave you. This is all about money as well. It's not just mind control itself, but it's keeping their power. And how they do that? By keeping you spending your money, working for that money, that invisible made-up concept, which in itself is mind control, that has taken a hold of your world. Has taken a hold of our world since beyond the Dark Ages, back centuries and centuries and millennia. So that means the private enterprise is in this as well. They know all about this stuff. The private corporations, yes, the same ones that are putting all these devices in your homes, actually, and everywhere else.
store is this? I had to get my girls to have a look.
It's not your imagination. What's that? Who's there? It's not your imagination. What's that? Who's there?
Our conscience. It's what helps us choose right from wrong, good from bad, and fair trade bananas from the rest. So to convince shoppers that all good fair trade bananas were the way to go, we became that inner voice, literally. We used a new sound device called the Audio Spotlight. Unlike a regular speaker, the Audio Spotlight emits a narrow, high-frequency beam of sound. Because its audio is focused, it's heard by you and you alone, like that voice in your head. We positioned this device over a floor sticker in store, and when shoppers stood on it, they heard their own private message. No one else heard a thing. Here's how it worked.
Hi. You can hear me, can't you? You're the only one. Look around. No one else can. See? Know who I am? I'm that inner voice. I want to talk to you about something. Fair trade. Look at them all. Those bananas in front of you. Which should you buy? I know. And you do too. They're all good bananas. They're the only fair trade ones. So now you know which ones to choose? Make a good choice.
Man, it was so weird, but it was real cool. Like, it sounded like there was a voice actually in my head. It was, I can't really explain it. It was awesome.
Yeah, how did they do it? It kind of freaked me out a little bit. I felt like someone was inside my head. Can I go on it again?
Over 2 weeks, thousands of shoppers listened to their conscience, and all good sales went up 130%, which was all good.
Okay, so you've seen this thing in action, how the companies, TV, you know, AME, want to, okay, start over. So yes, you see how these corporations, TV hopped on this immediately. Television, we have a TV channel promoting a TV show. Mind control, brainwashing. That's the narrative here. So, not to be so much of conspiracy theory here, or even though it's conspiracy fact. Again, I'm more about the science. So let's dig in. Let's dig into the science.
My name is Tom Lee. I am an electrical engineer with a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering. I have graduate studies in electrophysics with 41 years of experience in the design and development of satellites, RF, microwave, digital, electronics, and antennas, and computer programming and repairs. I want to present to the public this technical information on the design and development of RF hearing or microwave hearing, spying, and electronic biological weapons, also known as EBW, satellite systems. This information is from my professional and personal experience. For the balance of this presentation, I will refer to RF hearing or microwave hearing as RF hearing. The following figures depict the various technological concepts that are used to create a satellite system that can be used for spying, RF hearing, voice and sound generation, and electronic biological weapons generation. It will enable the reliable generation of a voice directly into the inner ear from a transmitted RF signal on demand. Figure 1 shows the equivalent circuit of an inner ear. The R is an equivalent biological resistance of the inner ear. The 0 and 180-degree phase shifted tone and voice modulated radar RF hearing voice signals are cancelled out across R, the biological resistance, leaving the electrical voice signal to go to the brain for hearing. Figure 2 shows the 0 phase and 180-degree phase shifted tone and voice modulated radar RF hearing voice signals hitting the targeted victim to generate the audio and voice sounds in the inner ear. Figure 3 shows 2 voice modulated radar RF signals. One is at 0 RF phase and the other is phase shifted 180 degrees. When they are added, the RF portion of the voice modulated RF signal is cancelled and only the voice remains for hearing. The mathematics used to analyze these waveforms is simple high school trigonometry. Figure 4 shows an experimental setup to demonstrate the SPI radar RF signals that can be used to reflect out the vibrations from the vocal cords or throat to spy on conversations from a remote location. In this case, when used in a satellite, it can be approximately 250,000 feet or higher for low-altitude orbital satellites or 24,000 miles high for geosynchronous satellites. It will also pick up and reflect out of the body other biological information such as eye information for video, subvocal recognition, which is essentially mind reading, and more information such as computer data can be accessed remotely, and it can hunt for submerged nuclear submarines. This is all mentioned in the remainder of the presentation. Please observe all safety precautions. This is an electronic biological weapon. Any risk encountered will be the responsibility of the user. All transmissions of RF signals will require FCC approval and appropriate operator licensing. Maximum RF exposure as specified by the FCC is 0.2 milliwatts per square centimeter for 30 minutes of exposure time. Figure 5 shows an experimental test setup that will generate a tone or voice in the head and inner ear from a pair of tone or voice modulated radar RF hearing voice signals. Two identical audio tone or voice modulated RF signals with one of them RF phase shifted 180 degrees are both transmitted into the targeted victim's head. The two RF signals are then phase cancelled in the inner ear. The remaining electrical audio tone and electrical voice signal will be heard in the inner ear. Figure 6 shows a simpler, less expensive experimental test setup to use than that of Figure 5. Figure 7 shows how this spy and tracking signal RF hearing voice generation electronic biological weapon radar satellite system is implemented. This two-satellite radar system is called a bistatic radar system. When not used as a radar, spy, RF hearing, tracking, or EBW satellite, it is used as a standard communication satellite. It is very deceptive in its total capability. Please read the balance of this presentation. It is very lengthy and may be boring to most, but it contains very important details. It is too lengthy to say all of it here. Please use the pause icon at the lower left to stop the flash feeding of the presentation so you can read it at your own pace. Use the video enlargement buttons at the lower right of the display if the lettering is too small to see. Please tell others of this information. You may help comfort those afflicted with radar RF hearing signals generated by the United States government and associated parties. All persons that are afflicted with this microwave hearing or RF hearing signals should do what I did. Submit to the United States government a contract for money for using these microwave or RF hearing satellite systems on you for services rendered. My contract is mentioned in this presentation. I will be demonstrating the RF hearing voice generation that you can hear directly in the inner ear in the very near future. Thank you for your interest and time.
This is the acoustic heterodyne ultrasound weapon. U.S. patent 5889870, patented March 30th, 1999. The first piece of this weapon starts with two 200 kilohertz air-type ultrasound transducers. In step 2, you see two waveforms coming out of these tubes. There is no audible sound. This is ultrasound beyond human hearing. However, as noted in the Wikipedia article on the ability to hear ultrasound, the upper frequency limit in humans, approximately 20 kilohertz, is due to limitations of the middle ear, which acts as a low-pass filter. Ultrasonic hearing can occur if ultrasound is fed directly into the skull bone and reaches the cochlea through bone conduction without passing through the middle ear. So that is very much like the microwave hearing effect that does not pass through your ear but is bounced off the skull. Also, take note of the other thing I highlighted. It is the fact that children can hear some high-pitched sounds that older adults cannot hear. Now, number 3, you see one signal is pure 200 kilohertz sound. And here in 4, The other signal from the other tube is nominal 200 kilohertz, but it's frequency modulated by voice or other audible range input. This is very much similar to the technique of silent sound, microwave mind control. Now, number 5, you see that all audible sound comes from the point of impact, which can be a person, a bird, a wall, a tree, a window, whatever. This technology can be used to drive people crazy. Now, the signal in 4 that is carried by the pure 200 kilohertz sound coming from the other tube, this can also carry ultrasonic hypnosis, resulting in undetectable hypnotic effects. See also U.S. Patent 5356368 by Robert A. Monroe, October 18, 1994. Method of and apparatus for inducing desired states of consciousness. There are several related patented technologies using microwaves and ultrasound that this acoustic heterodyne can also be used for. Regarding how the acoustic heterodyne can be used to drive people crazy, I'm going to be putting up another video that discusses a paper by John J. McMurtry and Edward A. Moore from 2005 and updated in 2008, titled Technological Simulation of Hallucination. And this paper details how the ultrasound and microwave weapons are used so that the government can have people declared crazy.
Okay, everybody knows what this is. A laser, right? Nice beam of light. Many applications. Have you ever, what about sound? Can we create a laser-like or a beam of sound? Well, it's very hard to do. And the reason it's hard to do is that typical sound wavelengths are like this big. And long wavelengths bend. They bend around objects. If you have two people on either side of a barrier here, an opaque barrier, they can't see each other, but they can hear each other, right? How can that happen? Well, the sound diffracts. And it diffracts because the wavelength's long. When the wavelength's small, if the wavelength was very small, the sound would just go out here and this person wouldn't hear. So this makes it really hard to create a beam. But people have been extremely clever about this, and there is a way. It's complicated. We teach it in an advanced course here, and it takes 2 lectures. Is that right, Andres? Oh, he left. He's supposed to do that? Yeah, so I'm going to try to give you just a basic, make this really simple. This is called an audio spotlight, and it's only $2,000. And you know who paid for it? Your parents, right? Okay. So what it does is it has some transducers here, some discs that generate sound, and it puts out 65,000 hertz, 65 kilohertz. How high can we hear? 2,000. Around 20,000. Well, you might be able to. Not you get older. Well, you should have your hearing tested. It's important thing. So anyway, 65 kilohertz, way beyond ours. Dogs can't hear it. It turns out cats can. Okay, bats, no problem. They're typically, they go up to 100,000 hertz. All right? So we can't hear this. It's going, I haven't turned it on yet. When I do, it's going to blast out a 65 kilohertz beam. Because the wavelength is so small, it doesn't spread. Because 65 kilohertz has a wavelength like that. So it's going to be, in that sense, similar to a laser. It just comes right out as a beam. Now, how do we make that audible? Well, they put a modulation on top of the 65 kilohertz. There's a modulation. And now, here's the next thing I have to tell you. That 65 kilohertz is very high amplitude. It won't hurt you, we don't think. Okay? You certainly can't hear it, and we don't think it'll hurt you. And it's very high amplitude. And what happens when you have 2 sound waves like this, Sound plus sound can create sound, but only at high amplitudes. At low amplitudes, sound waves just travel right through each other. You may be sort of familiar with this. But at high amplitudes, you can create sound. So what happens in this apparatus is, the audio sound, the sound that you're going to hear, is actually created in the beam, not here. And because it's created in the beam, it stays in the beam, we have a beam of sound. So let me demonstrate this for you. Let me turn it on. And I'm going to find the piece of music that we like.
Yeah.
You may not like it.
The Eagles? Yes. You like the Eagles? Yes. Okay, good. Oh, we have a friendly audience this year.
Yeah. I think they're just saying that to make us feel better.
Right. All right.
It's worth the $2,000. It's not our money. Now, the sound that you're hearing is being created in this beam. It almost sounds like it's coming from your head. So let me try to scan the whole audience here so everybody gets to hear this. Absolutely remarkable. Pete, are you getting it? Let's try to, wait, one more thing. Let's try to bounce it off the wall. Raise your hand if you can very clearly hear it. I'm going to try to bounce it off the wall. Look at where the hands are raised.
So the science is there, okay? I don't know how many people on this planet has been admitted to a hospital, to a psych ward, because they were hearing voices. How many of these people lost their family's inheritance? How many people didn't get to be a witness in a court case? How many of these people didn't get to do whatever it is they were supposed to do? How many people lost out on their lives being guinea pigs to this sort of stuff? I mean, and this is on the individual level, which I will get into on the next documentary. But I want to show you people how the experimentation is going on in large populations. Because this isn't just crowd control. They want to be as subtle as they can be.
Shortly after we moved here, within the first few months, I just woke up in the middle of the night and heard this strong humming sound, kind of like a just a steady hum. I'm not sure of the exact pitch. It's kind of low, not unlike a refrigerator sounds.
From what I've heard is some people can hear it, some people can't. Some people, like, it rattles their teeth and stuff and like drives them insane, and some people hear it and doesn't bother them. I've heard interesting theories about it, like that there's underground engines here that power like Los Alamos and secret military installations around here. You know, when I live off in the middle of nowhere, and I listened for it, but I've never heard it.
One of the things I discovered is that whatever I was hearing was much, I mean, I could hear it inside of a structure inside the building. I couldn't hear it outside. I would go to the place where I thought it was emanating from, and it was some, you know, it might get weaker and then be somewhere else. And it was really frustrating. It was, you know, it would be really strong sounding when I was back in the bedroom. I'd hear it out there. I'd come out there, and it was smaller. So I thought, well, maybe it's outside somewhere. I'd go outside, and it completely vanished.
Do you ever hear a noise? Not a bump in the night per se, but a hum. A mysterious, constant, and very low frequency noise. If so, you may be one of an estimated 2% of the global population that can hear the hum. The hum is the name given to an ominous and very mysterious deep rumbling noise that can reportedly be heard by thousands of individuals across the globe. It apparently sounds like a very low-pitched rumbling sound, kind of like a diesel engine truck idling in the distance. But no matter how hard people search, no one has been able to locate the source of the sound. It sounds like it's coming from all directions equally. Some say it even comes from the sky. This is a recording of the hum made in Taos, New Mexico. For some, the hum causes headaches and nosebleeds. It drives others completely insane, with at least one suicide being attributed to the hum. It's usually heard in specific towns around the globe for several months or years before it disappears. And for some people, it never goes away. The first documented occurrence of the hum was in Bristol in the UK in the 1970s. A local newspaper asked Bristol city residents, "Have you heard the hum?" And over 800 people said they had. Since then, residents from hundreds of towns and cities from all over the world have reported hearing the hum and always described the sound in a similar manner. Some of the more notable locations, where up to 12% of the population have heard the noise, are Taos, New Mexico, Largs in Scotland, and Auckland, New Zealand. Reports of the hum have become so great that a website has been created where people can report their experience with the hum, and you can view a map of all of the reported cases across the world. This and other evidence led conspiracy theorists to conclude that the hum is a government attack or experiment being used on citizens to alter their state of mind. What is the cause? Have animals learned how to hum and are playing a gigantic practical joke on us puny humans? Is God bored? Or is it just tinnitus? The hum is most commonly heard by people aged between 55 and 70. So one instantly thinks it's the medical condition tinnitus. You know how your granny is always complaining about a ringing noise that isn't actually there, except for that one time you turned her hearing aid up to maximum. That was pretty bad of you. But if the cause is tinnitus, shouldn't the spread of people who've reported hearing the hum be evenly distributed across the globe? After all, tinnitus doesn't favour certain regions, but the hum is usually reported by clusters of people around specific locations. Also, new research carried out recently in Cambridge, England, suggests that the source of the hum is external, not internal, which is what hum sufferers have always argued.
In 1978, a story in the Eugene Register Guard announced the discovery of a mysterious radio signal that had been beaming the entire town of Eugene, Oregon for several years. The article begins, "A powerful radio signal that may be affecting human health has been monitored in several Eugene locations, and in the air 3,000 feet above the city. The source of the radio signal is unknown." By the time the headline appeared, University of Oregon industrial hygienist Marshall Van Oort had been attempting to get public health and federal agencies involved for months, with claims that many Eugene residents were suffering a wide array of health issues, including headaches, insomnia, coordination problems, ear and throat problems, and more. According to a July 1985 article by Operation Mind Control author Walter Boart and co-author Richard Sutton, which I found in the CIA's declassified documents database, a middle-aged Eugene man named Walter Toposky had contacted Van Oort for help after witnessing strange vibrations in his home and suffering horrible symptoms for 2 years. Toposky had not only suffered from insomnia and burning corneas, but he was also hearing voices. Van Oort became disturbed after he came down with the same symptoms while in Toposky's home. Van Oort himself also noticed the signal in his own home, which he described as a high-pitched, barely audible sound accompanied by a stuffiness in both ears. His symptoms included, among other things, a reddening of the skin. The sound and symptoms disappeared when he left his house. The signal itself was described as a radio frequency pulse signal, a 4.75 megahertz pulse occurring at 1,100 times per second.
It had been recorded inside multiple homes in multiple locations throughout Eugene, but it was also measured at 3,000 feet above the city and extending northward toward neighboring Corvallis, with hundreds of studies showing everything from negative genetic effects to neurological and behavioral effects.
As soon as the electronic age really dawned in a big way, and that really happened in World War II, when all kinds of devices were being played with, and radar was invented, and that was actually a game changer.
But in America, such research had been dominated almost exclusively by the U.S. military.
The more controversial are the non-thermal or effects of microwave, such as the neurological effects.
Neurological meaning what?
Well, effects on the nervous system, irritability, sleepiness, memory loss, headaches, yes, effects like that.
Dr. Robert O. Becker, author of multiple books on biology and electromagnetism, discusses at length how the military's entire system of command, control, communications, and intelligence was dependent upon the unrestricted use of all frequencies in the electromagnetic spectrum. This information was used to create false impressions.
Research to date has not demonstrated hazardous effects.
For example, statements such as, "There is no evidence for any effects of pulsed magnetic fields on humans," would have been literally true at the time, but the statement ignores the litany of such effects being found in laboratory animals and ignores the fact that no such tests had been officially conducted on humans in the U.S. at the time. In the background, documentation on the effects of EMF was being collected and stashed away from public consumption. In just one example of many, a 1959 CIA scientific intelligence report on the Soviet space program, which was not declassified until 2008, plainly discusses the fact that data from both Russian and American studies showed that, quote, electromagnetic energy of appropriate frequency and appropriately used might cause a variety of mental effects, including obliteration of memory, stimulation of memory, and hallucinations. A document from the Joint Publications Research Service out of Arlington, Virginia on the effects of non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation, only declassified in part in 2012 but dated 1977, the year before the Eugene signal story broke, states that in the comparing of modulated EMF experiments with research on the action of psychopharmacological agents, quote, we can note almost complete similarity in the spectrums of their action upon emotional reactions and the states of animals. In other words, by the 1970s, they found that modulated EMF could affect people's emotional states the same way psychotropic drugs could.
A scientist who did not want his identity revealed is employed by the U.S. government and has done secret RF weapons search. He believes humans are susceptible to remote alterations of mood and awareness.
Certain kinds of weak electromagnetic signals work exactly like drugs. So the promise is that anything you can do with drugs, you could do with the right electromagnetic signals. You could have a cause and effect relationship between a magnetic field and a biological function.
But the people were not to know. Formal U.S. scientific establishments were mobilized against any serious challenges to the thermal effects standard, and groups of manufactured experts and scientific boards were provided with ample funds to serve as expert witnesses and spokesmen against anyone with credentials raising serious questions about the bioeffects of electromagnetic energy. Any scientist who persisted in raising the issue of harmful effects of any portion of the electromagnetic spectrum was ignored, and those who couldn't be ignored were promptly ridiculed and discredited, and their research grants were withdrawn, while the military continued to refer to their own scientists who insisted that biological effects of non-thermal microwave radiation were physically impossible. This continued for years, and in one sense is the exact point of one of the most important and powerful but overlooked parts of the warning President Eisenhower gave when he left office.
Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
Interestingly, one of the people that Van Oort turned to for help in measuring the Eugene signal was a man named Clifford Schrock, a Tektronix Inc. engineer who, it is pointed out in the article, just so happened to write portions of the CIA and NSA's manuals on the use of radio equipment for debugging. Schrock also reported incurring a sudden splitting headache for no other apparent reason while he was taking his Eugene signal measurements, but he refused to admit that it could be caused by the frequency. The article ends with a few explanations of what could be causing such a strange signal, including the possibility of an errant frequency from a government military installation, although it doesn't really follow that a signal of such intensity, which would require an immense amount of power just to generate in the first place, would be beamed with such precision for so long totally on accident.
In your opinion, what are the odds of this being accidental, that this town just okay.
Zero. Below zero.
I mean, if that takes an extremely large amount of power, then that suggests to me that somebody would have to know that that was happening, and there's no way that that could just be some errant coincidence.
It had to be military. Had to be military, because really, I mean, that's the only entity. It had to be a government entity. I mean, the resources just to maintain it and run it are enormous.
Two things are worth noting here. First, and this will come into play later, Tektronix has taken millions in contracts with the Navy. The Moscow signal ceased the same year that an even more powerful signal began being picked up all over the world. A powerful 10 Hz signal emanating from a giant over-the-horizon radar in Ukraine that the Soviet Union was beaming at North America. It interfered with television and radio communications all over the world, and due to the noise it made, it came to be known as the woodpecker.
Broadcast by a number of high-powered radio transmitters operating deep in the Soviet Union since July 4th, 1976.
Speculation that the signal was an attempt at causing widespread neurological or behavioral effects were officially denied.
Though the official Defense Department explanation of the woodpecker is that it is an over-the-horizon radar designed to track U.S. missile launches, some scientists suspect that the woodpecker is designed to interfere with human brain function.
As far as I'm concerned, the potential that this has for producing a direct psychoactive effect upon a total American population is there, has never been disproven.
Dr. Robert Becker is a pioneer in the field of bioeffects of electromagnetism.
Signal range within which the woodpecker operates is that which has been reported by many investigators to produce a tranquilizing effect upon animals.
Despite attributing the signal to the Navy transmitter in Dixon, apparently dubbed the Dixon Duck, the Eugene signal remains a mystery to this day. So what really happened in Eugene? Was it a test? And if so, what was the goal? We drove out to the Dixon facility the unidentified radio signal in Eugene had been traced back to. It was something to behold. A large field filled with dozens of spokes sticking up out of the ground, much like upside-down metal teepees everywhere. At some point after the Eugene signal ended, 2 Gwyn towers were also erected on the site. Interestingly, the year after the Eugene signal was detected, the Navy decommissioned the base and contracted it out. Today it is run by a defense contractor based out of Rome, New York, the same town where the government's Tri-Services program, which helped establish the microwave safe exposure standard, was also based. Unexpectedly, the housing on the abandoned transmitter base was not empty. Further research revealed that the Dixon Migrant Center was relocated to the abandoned U.S. Navy housing adjoining the radio transmitter facility on Radio Station Road back in 1984. Today, these migrants are surrounded by these radio transmitters 24/7, literally in their backyard. In The Body Electric, Becker briefly mentions the Eugene signal, stating that many engineers who studied it concluded it was a manifestation of the woodpecker, and that it was being directed to Eugene by means of a Tesla magnifying transmitter, a device designed by Nikola Tesla during his turn-of-the-century wireless experiments near Pikes Peak, which enables a radio signal to be beamed through the Earth to any desired point on the surface. He goes on to provide evidence that the woodpecker signal may have served a dual purpose, outwardly a submarine link, but with the added bonus of an experimental attack on the American people. Becker refers to the whole business as looking more and more like an undeclared electromagnetic war. one that had been going on for decades, if it isn't still going on today.
The disruption to our brain function from ever-growing layer upon layer of cumulative and chronic electromagnetic fields is fragmenting us continually.
All of them have had this vibration in their homes. It was measured, it was on record. They did find the actual signal itself as causing that, but they still said, well, it's not in a range that causes issues, so there's nothing to see here, go home. And I don't even see how that could be possible to say with a straight face or at all.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, just because you can't see the wind doesn't mean that it doesn't do damage, you know?
Because microwaves then were used as weapons, as they are today. It is a perfect stealth weapon. And when governments don't like a group of people, for instance, the ladies who protest at Greenham Common in England about the American missile base they camped, they were microwaved.
What are some of the medical problems that could occur from chronic exposure to microwaves?
There are a whole host of medical problems. First of all, there's been a lot of work to show that the neurasthenic syndrome, which in our country we would call the anxiety state, is produced by chronic exposure to microwaves.
And so, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just one or two people. It's entire populations, entire areas. Okay? If an entire town can say they hear something, well, something's going on, don't you think? Again, the symptoms. The symptoms are everywhere. The sicknesses, the feeling okay in one spot and not another. And I really can't say too much more about this because I won't have anything else to say in the next documentary as I go over the victims' side of the story on this aspect. So the thing is that these people are telling us everything. Everything's an open conspiracy. There's so many people involved in these projects around the world. I don't care what it is. Fluoride in the water, the GMOs, they can't hide the stuff because there's so many of us. Because there's so many of us. And there's so many of them. It takes a large workforce of people to commit these crimes. So what do they have to do? They have to make it seem like, oh, it's not a crime. Oh, we're doing this. We're the government. It's okay. Oh, no, it's good for you. And they really don't want to talk about something. Deny, 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 deny. Huh. Yeah, wouldn't it be helpful to have all these things spread across the domain? These people, in their terminology, they want this technology across the world. Domains, domains, domains. They have actually shown you they don't believe in domains. They don't mind crossing boundaries. There are no domains. They want the full spectrum dominance. So, as they are going to have this spread across all domains, how is it that they're going to do it and us not notice it?
Have you ever been driving along the highway and noticed a rather odd-looking tree sticking up above the rest? What kind of tree do you think that is?
It's a pine tree.
It's a pine tree?
It looks like it anyway.
It's not a tree.
What do you think it is?
I think it's disguised as a tree.
It should have more leaves coming down further, like a real evergreen tree.
What you're looking at is actually a cell phone tower. Many communities have decided that this is easier on the eyes than one of these.
No one really wants that visual pollution. There are certain cities that now have required all the new towers that are being built to be disguised.
Andrew Messing is the president of Larson Camouflage, a company that builds cell phone towers in a wide variety of disguises, from palm trees to water towers to flagpoles.
This is one of our saguaro cacti that's going up to the Phoenix area, and the antennas are concealed inside. They're extremely realistic. People drive by them all the time and they think they're real cacti.
Cell antennas are also being hidden inside all kinds of architecture, like clock towers and fake chimneys.
The site very much dictates how the tower will be disguised. We've done some grain silos in the Midwest because it would look funny to have a 150-foot tall pine tree.
And every antenna comes with electrical equipment, which also must be hidden. In this Colorado site, it's encased in a man-made boulder. And in Arlington, Virginia, this house has the neighborhood fooled.
Door-to-door salesmen visit this house. Free newspapers are dropped off at this house.
John Johnson works for Verizon Wireless, which built a house where no one is ever home. The inside is filled with the equipment needed to operate a traditional tower that sits in the backyard.
Why do you have really a very nice looking house as a housing for electronics?
Well, if you look around, this is a very nice neighborhood. We wanted to be able to blend into the neighborhood and not create something that would be unwelcome.
But disguises are expensive. A tree like this can cost as much as $120,000, 4 times the price of a metal tower.
Now, do you camouflage all your cell phone towers?
If we did, you probably couldn't afford your cell phone service. But we do camouflage those ones that we need to.
And the ones they feel they need to disguise are often in communities that put up a fight and refuse to accept a traditional tower. Of the approximately 200,000 cell antenna sites in the U.S., only about a fourth are camouflaged or hidden.
Here we're at the tennis stadium, and we've disguised our cell site to look very much like one of the light poles that illuminates the stadium here.
But for many churches, the wireless problem is a blessing. This Washington congregation receives more than $1,000 a month to allow antennas to operate in their steeple.
It's sort of serendipity that we came to have this, and so I think a lot of churches would like to have it.
But of all the disguises we've seen, our favorite is this site in Staten Island, a cell phone tower made to look like a lighthouse. And it's so realistic that neighbors say it attracts tourists.
They do take photos, have people that do come up, they look at it.
The only giveaway is that it's miles from the ocean.
It's much nicer than what it could be. I mean, would you like that instead of antennas just showing up? Oh, it's beautiful. It's outright beautiful.
And you guys, you know what? With text messaging and video streaming on the rise, wireless companies will continue to be very busy building more towers. And if they do it the way they hope to do it, you won't even notice them.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is real. This is real. Hey, you clicked on the link, okay? You fell down the rabbit hole. You want to know what's going on? You found it. Okay? You found all of it. So, the thing about mind control and covert warfare, no one has to know if that's going on. Someone asked me one time, how is it can you tell if you're under mind control? How would you be able to tell? Well, you can't unless you have something that sticks out, okay, that says otherwise. How do you know you're under mind control from a frequency tower or a frequency antenna when it looks like a cactus? Out of sight, out of mind. And I don't know how these people are getting away with having these facilities disguised as homes. I mean, think about it. You're going to go to McDonald's, right? Well, if you're going to go to McDonald's, you got to know what the McDonald's looks like, right? McDonald's can't just all of a sudden start selling hamburgers out of houses. There are codes, there are regulations, there are identifiers across the board. This is a restaurant. This is a restaurant. You're gonna get hamburgers here, right? Everybody sees Golden Arches, right? How are you gonna have houses? And I don't want to hear this crap about, well, they look ugly. It's so... Make them into art projects. I don't care. Paint them, make them look pretty. That's a lame excuse for when the population does understand what's going on and we all storm and try to destroy the infrastructure. Yeah, we'll be burning and tearing down towers, but what about the stuff we don't see? The homes, the Christmas trees, the churches. And don't get me started on the churches, people. The churches are getting paid to have these towers installed into the top of their buildings. Or, you know, the huge crosses out in the landscapes around the churches. Now, imagine you're in church and you hear God telling you to do something. Is anybody awake yet? Is anybody seeing what's going on here? Does anybody see what's going on here? So let's hear the last words from the Colonel here.
So this list of opportunities here is specifically a call to action. And these opportunities are explained in more detail in the Association of Old Crow paper, and I hope that you'll take time to read that. These opportunities address the gaps in that previous slide. So in summary, the Association of Old Crow, we exist to ensure that warfighters in all domains are properly prepared for operations in a contested electromagnetic spectrum environment, and that is what electronic warfare in the 21st century is all about. Thank you.
Opportunities, opportunities, opportunities. Come and get the mark of the beast. Come work for us. Be controlled. Be a robot slave. Being controlled by psychopathic robot slaves. A godless and gutless system. People, you do have an opportunity. You have opportunity. You have an opportunity to get educated, to get active, and to get militant before it's too late. Dr. Stephen Greer, a man that I found out about recently through research. I'm surprised I didn't run to his material before. But this guy is right on. He's a doctor, medical doctor, head of SETI, and he has spoken to a lot of people over the years, especially government agents, whistleblowers, just like I do. And the information he has is tremendous. And it really, really goes to show you that anybody who's out there looking for truth will find it. Now, this particular clip, he's talking about the psychotronic devices and what they can do.
We can target somebody with an electromagnetic field that has embedded in it like a script or a hologram or a series of experiences, like a lucid dream. And that person will believe it's real. And it'll be indistinguishable from reality. And I'm quoting now from this senior scientist. He said, it is so good that if we want you to have a personal conversation with your personal God, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, whoever it is, you will have it, you will think it's real, and you will absolutely pass the lie detector test. That's how good it is. Now that was fully operational in 1956. It did so well that we can target somebody with an electromagnetic.
Ever been followed home at night by a bright star? UAV drone. Have you ever felt like you are being watched? Energy spectrum surveillance. Have you ever heard a buzz in your brain and ringing in your ear? Satellite EEG brain entrainment. Have you ever felt like someone is reading your thoughts? Remote neural monitoring. Have you ever heard voices in your head that were not your own? Voice to skull. Have you ever heard these voices repeat themselves unending? Synthetic audio harassment. Known someone driven mad by the voices till they killed people? CIA, NSA on shelf shooters. We are just people. We are brothers and sisters, fathers and mothers. We are young and old alike. We come from every walk of life and every corner of the world. We are just people. Yet, through all of our diversity, we have found common ground. We stand united as one and divided by zero. The Red Pill Hardcore exposes the truth with the answers.